Welcome to the Gay Liberation Network here on Chicago Access Network Television. I'm Andy Thayer, your host, and with us today is Blane Roberts of Dignity Chicago. For those who are not familiar with Dignity Chicago, Dignity is a Catholic social justice organization, not just for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, but for people who think that LGBT people deserve equal rights.
Absolutely.
Blane, could you tell our viewers a little bit more about Dignity, how your group started, and what your mission is?
Absolutely. First of all, Dignity has been around, local chapter of Dignity Chicago has been around 40 years. And certainly this year we will be celebrating our 45th anniversary on May the 19th at Via Francesa.
And we'll get some information up on the screen on that a little bit later.
So we're very excited about that. Basically, our organization is a local chapter here. We also have a national umbrella parent company called Dignity USA. And certainly if you want to find more information about Dignity Chicago, go to dignity-chicago.org. And certainly we are a advocacy organization. We have about 200 members locally here, and nationally we have chapters all over the country. And basically our mission is not simply to respond to the injustices of the Catholic hierarchy, but to provide a safe and welcoming environment for our community. We are a very positive, affirming community, and we welcome people, not just the LGBT community, but many people throughout, the city of Chicago, and people who have been marginalized, particularly when it comes to women as well. So we're an open chapter, we're an open organization, and we welcome any and all.
Okay. And for those who are not familiar with the Gay Liberation Network, we're a direct action organization. We believe that street protests and marches and so forth are what bring social justice, and that there's plenty of social injustice, not just towards LGBT people, but all sorts of groups in society. And that's why the Gay Liberation Network is involved not just in fighting for LGBT rights, but organizing against their various wars. We've been very active in organizing against the forthcoming G8 and NATO summits, about which more in the program. And if you want to get in touch with the Gay Liberation Network, you can check out our website here, www.gayliberation.net. And that website that Blane was just talking about is, of course, www.dignity-chicago.org. And there you see a picture of some of the chapter members here in Chicago. And the reason why the Gay Liberation Network and we're working with Dignity, particularly at this time, is that in a few days we're going to be having our, I believe it's our 10th annual Freedom to Marry Day demonstration. We've partnered with Dignity Chicago, the Rainbow Sash Organization, Equality Illinois, the Eighth Day Center for Justice, another Catholic social justice organization, as is Rainbow Sash, all to point out frankly, the anti-gay bigotry of the Cardinal George here in Chicago, who some may recall back in December compared lesbians and gays to the KKK, which is an utterly repugnant statement, which he unfortunately then attempted to justify and repeated several times on major broadcast outlets, and then did what at least we in the GLN consider to be a very lame apology on a Friday night posting on the Archdiocesan website. Now, the significance of the event that Blane and I and many others are working on, Freedom to Marry Day, is it happens right around Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and happy Valentine's, by the way. I brought my red on specifically for Valentine's, so I want you to know that, and the viewers to know
on this nice snowy night in Chicago. And that event is going to be happening this Sunday, 10:30 a.m. in front of Holy Name Cathedral, where we're going to be basically protesting the Catholic leaderships, and I've got to emphasize the leadership's anti-gay hate, because many people don't know it, but actually not only do a majority of lay Catholics support equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, but also they are more apt to than the general population as a whole. So this whole notion that people of faith, or the Catholic faith in particular, are more hateful towards gay people, the way that some of the religious right might have you think, is an utter falsehood, at least so far as Catholics are concerned. And,
Absolutely.
and that's where we really need the voices of people like Blane and Dignity Chicago.
Yes.
Now, what is your motivation and Dignity Chicago's motivation for participating in this Sunday's protest, Blane?
I think it's important that injustices, wherever they may be, that we're all human, and that we are, in fact, are God's children, and that we stand together, that we support each other in the cause. And again, our participation, as well as others, we believe that all of us are God's children, and that discrimination against one is really a discrimination against all. And when we come together, we don't come together in hate. We do have serious differences with the hierarchy of the Catholic faith. Our membership has different disagreements. I do. But we also understand that if we can be a voice by our presence, by our lives, the positive influence that we have in our local families, our churches, our community, showing that kind of expression of love and commitment, I think is very important. Because when we demonstrate, it's a demonstration of love. It's an affirmation of who we love and what we're about, and that's what we want to do.
And here's the details on that demonstration Blane was talking about. Again, Freedom to Marry Day. Oops, that's 2012. Bad slide there. Sorry, guys. At 10:30 a.m. this coming Sunday at Holy Name Cathedral, 735 North State Street. Again, it's 2012, not 2011. We've been doing this for a few years, you can tell. But it's going to be this coming Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Holy Name Cathedral, 735 North State Street. And that's right by the Chicago Red Line L stop. And I might note again that the 40th anniversary of Dignity Chicago is coming up that Blane just mentioned. That's going to be Saturday, May 19th at Mia Francesca's in the Little Italy neighborhood, 1400 West Taylor Street. So you can find out more about that at Dignity Chicago's website, and we'll be having that website up here in just a few moments. Now, one thing that I think is a particular motivation why people should really come out to this year's Freedom to Marry Day is some events just of the past week.
Absolutely.
We just had a tremendous victory in California with a court basically ruling that Proposition 8, which is the proposition that passed in November 2008, basically saying that same-sex couples could not marry, said that that was unconstitutional, and it was a very sweeping decision in our favor. And we all know that this is going to eventually make its way to the Supreme Court, probably, but nonetheless, that's important momentum.
Sure.
Is the onus is on the other side to disprove what these lower courts have ruled. And coming in that wake, we also have Washington State, where the Senate in that state has been the blocker, if you will, to passage legislatively of equal marriage rights. They just passed that. It's going to sail through the House. The governor is set to sign it. She's already said she's going to sign it next week. That is tremendous momentum for equal marriage rights coming in our favor. And we now have the first serious indications here in the state of Illinois that legislators are going to push for full equal marriage rights here in Illinois, which is about time, given that
it's exciting.
Given that the Democrats have controlled both houses of the state for forever, as well as the governorship, and yet we still have a Defense of Marriage Act in this state. Right. So really the time to strike is while the iron is hot, to use an old blacksmith metaphor. I may be dating myself.
Or the iron
here.
could be red, too.
There you go. And so really we're encouraging people to come out to Freedom to Marry Day this coming Sunday, 10:30 a.m. in front of Holy Name Cathedral, 735 North State Street, because the principal opponent in this state to every single piece of equal marriage rights or equal rights in any fashion for LGBT people, whether it's safe schools or what have you, has been the Catholic leadership, particularly Cardinal George, who, when he was president of I believe it's called the U.S. Conference of Bishops, am I getting that correct? He ordered the massive funding to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars of the pro-Proposition 8 forces in California, and also the anti-gay Question 1 forces in the state of Maine. And while the Mormon Church hierarchy played the leading role in rolling back Proposition 8 in California, arguably the Catholic Church provided something like 1/3 of the funding for the Question 1 forces in Maine, and were the key to pushing that through. And really, as a student of history at Blane, I look at how our community reacted after the November 2008 election, where everyone then began pointing out the role of the Mormon hierarchy, which had really flown underneath the radar screen, and we can't let that happen again.
And I think, to your point, I think one thing I remind everyone is that this is a democracy, and certainly everyone has a right to express and support whatever cause they want to, be it the Catholic hierarchy, who we strongly disagree with. And likewise, we have a right to support our, community, and that's what we're here for. We're here to support. This is what we stand for. We stand for love. We stand for equality. And our message is far more powerful because it's the power of inclusion.
I would say that that's true to a point, but Blane, you got to remember, in terms of advocacy, the Catholic Church, like other major religious denominations, is tax exempt, and frankly, a lot of the measures that Cardinal George has taken against our community come at least very close to the line, if not going across that line, of violating their tax exempt status. And I think it's one thing, just from the principle of democracy with a lowercase d, is that it's one thing for the Catholic Church to celebrate marriage in the way that it wants.
Sure.
We may disagree with that, and we may find it repugnant. Some of us may choose not to be Catholic for that reason.
Sure.
But no one has got the right to dictate what kind of religion other people follow, and what whole groups of rights. Which brings up this recent thing with contraception.
Yes.
And the Catholic. What are your views on that, Blane?
Well, my personal views, separate from
you speak for yourself here, because probably Dignity doesn't have a position on it.
So I don't think we really have a position on it, but certainly I think there's concern that there's an overreach by government to impose, if you have conscience, whether or not one should provide for contraception. The other part of that is that it's for women's health issues, etc. And I think there's merits on both sides, quite frankly, personally. I really don't want the government dictating who I marry. I don't want the government dictating if I need contraceptives, I can go out and purchase them. There's many organizations that do a great job of that. I certainly think the overall issue of certainly providing the kind of support for women, we still need to continue to do that, even irrespective of the Catholic faith. And I think that's part of our role, is to provide that support where someone can't get the kind of services. There are other options for people. The Catholic Church is certainly not the only employer in town. It's not the only non-for-profit organization in town. And it's my hope that that we will continue to reach out and make sure that we support people in their decisions. But I am one who I am not interested in the government overreach into my personal life in terms of what should I do, because I never know when it ends, and that concerns me greatly.
Okay, again, not speaking necessarily on behalf of the Gay Liberation Network, but I would respectfully disagree, because I think what we're dealing with is a case of employee rights here. And if an organization said, well, we don't like Latinos, or we don't like whatever group, and we're not going to have them, I don't care if you're a religious organization or not. And the fact is that reproductive health is health care. It is, I think, fundamental to women's right to control their bodies. And if it's actually overreach on the part of the Catholic Church to say that, oh, well, we're a religion, therefore we get to discriminate in employment matters, that's like saying, all people who aren't the right color, whatever, out the door. That's, to me, what it's saying. It's setting up an unfair employment situation for a whole class of people, in this case, women, and contraceptives can be expensive.
And you know most women in the Catholic Church supports contraceptive rights.
Absolutely.
And so, again, we have this...
Well, and we've got a huge situation here where so many social services, which I believe should be taken care of by non-sectarian organizations, are instead farmed out to various religious organizations, many of whom get the vast majority of their funding support from the government, not from private donors. Sure. And yet they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Well, you certainly raise a valid point, and I think that's why it's important that we continue the dialogue, because I think, like you see here in this show, people have, feelings about this on both sides. And I think it's important because of that, that we're respectful, but also that we try to be a bit more sensitive on each side. Of course, we're concerned about the health of everyone, but even private employers may choose a certain design plan for their employee base. Irrespective of who they are, they might say simply, we can't afford it. So for this employer, they might say, we're going to carve out this benefit. Well, the next person may be hired by a larger company. They don't have the best health care plan either. So it's individual employers deciding for its employees what they think. And that's always been a practice in insurance companies, meaning that the employer sets the tone. This is what we can afford. These are the premiums we're going to pay. We don't cover infertility for your plan, but some other employer might decide to put that in a plan. But guess what? They have a higher premium. Yeah. So I think those are some of the issues I think that we'll continue to, and I hope in all of this that we come up with a balance, and I think we can.
Well, I think it goes back to health care is a fundamental right. Women's health care should not be discriminated against, and I think that's frankly what's going on here. And I think it was very tragic that President Obama caved on this, and caved, I think, pretty miserably. But that's a whole other show, perhaps. But I think getting back to the issue at hand for this Sunday, again, we've got Freedom to Marry Day, Sunday, May 12th at 10:30 a.m. in front of Holy Name Cathedral, 735 North State Street. I think one of the reasons why the Catholic hierarchy has made such a hullabaloo about issues like gay marriage, they know that if equal marriage rights passes in the state of Illinois or elsewhere, the government is not going to go in and tell the church who they can and cannot marry. The government already does not go in and tell the Catholic Church that divorcees must be allowed to marry in the Catholic Church. The fact is that has never been on the agenda, and yet Cardinal George has liked to play the victim role and said, religious liberty is under threat, which is total hokum so far as equal marriage rights is concerned. I certainly do hope that Catholics of good conscience are able to force the church to make some fundamental changes. I mean, the church at one point had no problem with the issue of slavery, for example, and that changed, fortunately, and that was in large part probably due to the pressure of people in the pews.
Absolutely.
So just because the church is backward in terms of the leadership right now doesn't mean it has to stay that way. And I think a lot of the backwardness that we're seeing coming out of the Catholic Church is a defensive reaction against the sexual molestation cases. Read in the Chicago Tribune just a few weeks ago that the Catholic Archdiocese just here in Chicago has paid out $120 million in settlements and jury judgments over the past 10 years. I mean, $120 million. And you think of all the different parochial schools that have closed down or dramatically cut back, all the different parishes that are very much hurting for funds. I mean, it takes a lot of money to heat and so forth. So, anyway, so I think there's a huge diversion going on from that issue.
Absolutely. And I also remind, again, there's, in all the hierarchies and status quo, even in this country, often it's the people that are ahead of their leaders. And I don't think the Catholic Church is any different in that respect. And certainly there's a lot of good that our leadership has done, the Catholic Church as well as our government. But it's important that we point out that when they stray and when they err, we're there to remind them and correct them. The Catholic Church, for example, Catholic Charities, a number of organizations that do a tremendous job in this country and around the world. And I think that's also a very important, the scandals certainly get the news, and correctly to get the news, because when the kind of abuse that happened in the hands of the Catholic hierarchy should always be challenged, and we shouldn't let that go by. So.
Well, thank you very much. Blane Roberts is, of course, with Dignity Chicago here in Blane is going to be joining the Gay Liberation Network, as well as the Rainbow Sash Organization, Eighth Day Center for Justice, and Equality Illinois in this protest coming up this Sunday at 10:30 a.m. This is a real opportunity to win equal marriage rights here in Illinois. Washington and California are setting the pace, and let's not be the laggards in this struggle. Just a few closing announcements before we close out the show here. Just like to point out that we've got Freedom to Marry Day again. That's 2012, not 2011. Shoot the production person, i.e. me, 10:30 a.m. this coming Sunday in front of, non-violently, yes, Holy Name Cathedral, 735 North State Street. That's right near the Chicago Red Line L station. And, of course, get in touch with Dignity Chicago at www.dignity-chicago.org. And they're going to be having their 40th anniversary celebration coming up Saturday, May 19th in the evening at Mia Francesca's in the Little Italy neighborhood at 1400 West Taylor Street. The next GLN meeting, we meet the first Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. It's the Burger Park Cultural Center, corner of Sheridan in Granville, just east of the Granville Red Line L stop. And the next show on CAN TV by the Gay Liberation Network is going to be Friday, March 9th at 6:30 p.m. on this same station. And now finally, just a few closing thank yous.